Hello, this is Coach Aaron Saft in the Running His Life podcast. And today we talk about mentally preparing for a race. This is a topic I think, it's something that you need to practice all the time in your training, just in life. It's one of those um, pieces that I think we underappreciate or that we don't practice enough. Because when we do races, so much of it is mental. Physically, typically we prepare well. We know when we're not prepared. We know when we haven't trained. If we are consistent with our training, physically, you're fine. If you are consistent with your training, you are fine. If you've done the right things. So, that's a whole nother conversation. But for mental preparation, there's a lot that we need to kind of address. And I would start with your goals, creating your goals. Goals A, B, and C. A being your dream goal, B being a moderate goal, and C being I'd still be okay with this. And we've talked about making goals in the past and being okay with if any of those come about. You have to be okay if, B goal is out the door and you're down to C goal. Yeah, that has to be okay with you. You have to be accepting of that, or else it makes the race very difficult. And that becomes down to the mental part of this. So accepting your goals are huge. They need to be realistic, all of them, A, B, and C. A needs to be realistic. It's not a moonshot. You're not like, if I have the greatest day on earth, this will happen. Because, a lot of times that doesn't, unfortunately. Like, I don't mean to be pessimistic or negative, but we have to be realistic in our A goal. It has to be quite attainable. We want to make sure that we can get to that A goal, right? Because then it makes it a little bit more of a downer if you're right off the bat, you're like, geez, I'm already off my A goal. That's tough. Okay. Don't put yourself in that situation. Write these goals down, share them, make people accountable or make help make yourself accountable. So people can help, your team can help in making you stick to your goal and go after your goal. So share them, write them down, put them places where you can see them, right? Like, so, in my workspace, if I have a goal, I'll typically put up a post-it note. I have friends that put them up on their mirrors in the bathroom as reminders, so wherever you're going to see it, on the fridge, on the microwave, put it somewhere where it's going to remind you, okay, that it's going to help you to remind you, okay, I'm after this goal, right? And revisit it from time to time. Keep making sure that you're on top of it. Is it still realistic? Should you change it? Right? Can you do better? That's the hope, right? Like, through training, hopefully you can do better. So revisit them from time to time. Make sure they still make sense, right? The next piece is a part of your goals, but we get into your whys, right? And we've talked about these a ton. I've talked about them after races, before races, talking about your extrinsic and your intrinsic whys. Now, these are yours. These can be extremely personal, and it depends on how personal it is as to whether you share these with anybody else. Extrinsic goals are something that motivates you, by, uh, something that doesn't drive you emotionally, we'll say. Okay, so extrinsic can be a reward, such as a buckle, a medal, okay, a time. These are all a place. These are extrinsic values, right? Whereas intrinsic value is something that motivates you internally, okay, or motivation, or excuse me, emotionally. You're emotionally driven. I've talked about my whys in my past, my love for my family, my love for this sport, my love for being out there and adventuring, right? Like, these are things that drive me. These are my intrinsic values. And we've talked about aligning your values with your whys, okay? So you can go back and listen to that. I'll try to put some of these in the show notes. If you want to go back and listen to some of these episodes, this is kind of putting all of that together. So you have to make sure that your whys are strong enough, right? And you need to revisit them. As I said with your goals, revisit these, make sure they're still strong. If not, you may need to change them, or you may need to revise them and make them stronger. As I said, you want these as strong as possible. Now, if it's not too personal, these are okay to share with your crew and your pacers. They may use those and remind you during the race when it gets tough. Hey, remember why you're doing this. Remember all the things you talked about, right? I typically with my athletes, a lot of them share their goals, of course, and their whys with me, right? Because then it makes more sense to me, and we can talk about that and revisit that. Is that still the case? Okay. So again, it's up to you whether you want to share these or not, but make them as strong as possible, and um, I guess in part, my why at High Lonesome was both extrinsic and intrinsic. Getting to see my daughter at mile 96.25, that's an extrinsic reward, but my love for her and that desire to not disappoint her was my intrinsic why. So I had two values wrapped in one, and that was enough to keep me going, right? And we talked about that in previous episodes. But there's an example of two wrapped in one, extrinsic and intrinsic. But it has to be a strong drive. That got me through. That got me to her. And then God, Lord knows she wasn't going to let me drop in those last few miles. So, it definitely it carried me through, and then we've talked about go back and listen to the Leadville episode, Leadville 100, because there I learned a whole lot. I learned a whole lot about intrinsic value and why I do this and who I am. Made a lot of sense to me. So go back and revisit that episode. Okay, so once you've got your goals and you've aligned your values and found your extrinsic and intrinsic whys, the next step would be to start looking for foreseen and even unforeseen obstacles. Okay. Things that might come up, that might get in your way, that might challenge you, right? And by unforeseen, I'll talk about those because how can you possibly think about things that are unforeseen? Well, like I said, we're going to dive into this. So think of troubles you've had in the past. And this is, again, what you should be doing in training, right? You're out on your long run. Things pop up in those long runs, right? And you need to take note of those. Those are good things to put into your training log, to write down in your journal, to kind of put at the forefront, have a list of, hey, this is a possible obstacle and this is like how I need to overcome it. Okay. So, while we're kind of thinking of those troubles that we've had in the past, then how did you resolve them, right? How did you get over those obstacles, those challenges? What did you do? Okay. And think about how did it resolve? What was the end result? Were you pleased with how you solved it? Could you have done it better? Okay. And if you don't have a resolution, if you're like, well, that came up and I didn't have a resolution and I still don't have an answer, then ask resources, right? Ask people. It's fine to reach out to me. Happy to, kind of give my 2 cents. And if I don't know, I'm happy to pass you along to somebody I think might have a better answer. Okay. But ask if you don't know. If it's been a problem in the past and you still haven't resolved it, you need to find the resources to help you do it. Now, one of my obstacles is my stomach. I've never had problems with my stomach in the past. This is last year and this year. I've had such stomach troubles in all my races, and I'm not sure why. It's an ongoing dilemma, and it's an ongoing place that I keep trying to go to resources to find out why do I have these troubles? What's going on? What am I doing wrong? What has changed in me that all of a sudden I'm having, stomach troubles in these races? Because as I said, prior to last year, prior to the Grand Slam, I did not have stomach troubles. And now all of a sudden, every 100 miler, I seem to have stomach troubles. So, again, it's an ongoing saga, but it is an obstacle. but I'm trying to find the resources to help me get through it. And it's not just one. I've asked dietitians and nutritionists. I've asked doctors, right? Like, what are your thoughts? What do you think? And I continue to practice different things to see if it works. Right? I haven't found the resolution yet, and that's troubling, but I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep asking, right? I want to get it. I want to get it resolved because I want to enjoy these races, obviously. But again, look for your resources and ask because I can't figure it out. I'm not sure what's going on. So I have to ask people that are smarter than me. So go out there, find your resources and ask. Okay. But you may be able to resolve it yourself. But it doesn't hurt to ask other people and say, hey, how would you have done this? Right? Maybe you're out for a run with your friend and you're like, hey, like came up with this resolution for this problem that I've had. What are your thoughts? What would you do? Right? So ask others. Okay. And then like it's not just your problems, right? Other people have problems that are different than your own, but you may have those same problems someday. So ask others. Ask that same training partner when you're out on the same run. Hey, what problems have you encountered and what did you do? Right? And how did it resolve? How did it go for you? And then put that in your storage. Put that, make a note and say, how would I have resolved that? What would I have done? Right? It's good things to think on, your problems and others, because, we all run into similar problems here and there and across time, across races. Different variables create different situations. So we have to be prepared for anything that may come out, right? So that's the unforeseen because it's something that we hadn't experienced, right? The foreseen is things that we know we've had problems with in the past. And then now it's trying to figure out how to resolve them and have enough tools in the toolbox to say, hey, I've got multiple ways I could handle this. And you hope that one of those work, right? That's the biggest thing. Along with that, besides thinking of your own, besides asking others, I would dive deep into videos and race reports for whatever race you're doing, right? Look at those, read those. Once you do, you'll start to figure out what are some of the biggest challenges that are presented by this race and how did people try to resolve those and overcome them, right? It gets your brain working. It starts building that toolbox to think about, oh, okay, it was really hot here. And this is what they did. They laid down in this creek or they got to this aid station and used their ice bandana, their ice buff and tried to cool off a bit, right? Or I need to have more water on this stretch because it's much longer and hotter than other stretches. So I need to be prepared to carry more fluids here. So then you carry an extra flask or a bladder, right? You have to prepare for those things. Those are challenges, and we have to learn how to face those challenges and be prepared for them and have our resolutions planned out. And again, you don't want to just have one plan because if that fails and you don't have a backup, then where are you? You're stuck, right? So even with a resolution, make sure it's not your only resolution. Make sure that you've got backups to your backups, right? It's just like nutrition. If nutrition A is not working, you switch over to nutrition B, and maybe that stops working. You go back to try A, that's still not working. So you need option C, right? It's the same thing. Have your options available to you. Have strategies to deal with challenges. And challenges, like I said, they could be anything. Could be altitude, could be heat, could be chafing, could be a fever like I've had. So, knowing what to do in these circumstances, it puts you in a much better place. You feel much more confident because you have the tools to deal with some of these things. You have plans in place in case some of these things go wrong. It gives you security. It makes you ready, more ready to race. You don't have a lot of nervous anxiety because you're like, all right, I've got a legit plan in case things go sideways, right? That is comforting. That is extremely comforting. But I think we miss that piece, right? We miss that when we're in our training because we're not thinking about these things. We're thinking about the physical, right? Did I get in enough miles? Did I practice my nutrition and my hydration? Those are it's super important. I'm not downplaying any of those roles in your preparation for any race. But that last piece, that mental component, you have to work on that. That piece may be what gets you through if the others start failing you, right? High Lonesome, for instance, my nutrition failed epically and I was miserable. But I had that mental fortitude to carry forward because I had a drive and I started problem solving. I used my crew. I said, "Hey, X, Y, and Z aren't working. What do we have that I can go to?" And as you know, pretzels was the solution. Pretzels and water. I subsisted off of pretzels and water for 50 miles, right? But it worked. Yep. All I had to do was now carry forward with that drive that I was given by my why. So having those resolutions, sometimes it's simple, you know. Now, carrying through at that mental capacity when you're just struggling is not easy, but you need those situations sometimes, right? You need those runs where you're just like, this is awful. Now, I'm not talking about if you're like physically dragging, you just don't feel great, right? But it gives you the capacity to say, hey, like, I know I can get through this. I know I can keep moving forward, albeit at a slower pace. I can keep moving forward, right? All right. So, with all that said, thinking about your obstacles, the next piece is to practice focus. Okay. And by focus, I mean, what are you focusing on? Is it time for you to zoom in or should you zoom out? Where are you? In what mental state are you? If you are in a negative mental space and you are solely focused on the pain in your big toe, it's time to zoom out. It's time to free up your mind and go back. And what does that for you? Is it music? Is it talking to someone else? Is it listening to a book? What lets you zoom out? What frees your mind from that singular focus that is absorbing your energies, where those energies could be spent on, making sure that you keep moving forward, that you're eating, that you're drinking, that you're not going too fast, right? Because you're focusing on something that is absorbing all this energy. It's a negative focus, right? There may be nothing that you can do about that at the moment, right? So take your focus and zoom out. Allow your brain to be free of that thought. Okay, that's an instance of zooming out. Now, zooming in is when perhaps you have the same wrong focus, right? Or let's just say, for instance, oh man, my stomach is just rotten. Oh God, this is awful, right? You're having these negative thoughts. Now you're zoomed in, right? But you're zooming in on the wrong thing. As I said in High Lonesome, I was zooming in. I was saying, okay, my stomach is rotten, but what can I do? Let me zoom in and focus on what works, right? That's zooming in on a positive. It's zooming in on something that's going to help me continue forward, right? Oh, there's a hot spot on the ball of my foot. I zoomed in, and what do? Right? Oh, I better take off my shoe, take off my sock, clean out my sock, put a little lube on there. When I get to the next aid station, I should probably put some tape on there, right? That's proper zooming in. That's finding resolution, not focusing and creating negative energy around something that's bothering you, right? So learning to zoom in properly, zooming in to help the instance, help the circumstance, help the challenge, the obstacle, right? That's proper zooming in. But if I'm in this negative headspace, right? And there's nothing, I'm tired. I'm real tired. And I'm focused on the fact that I'm tired. I'm fatigued. It's a hot day, right? I'm thinking about all these, negative things. It really is time to zoom out. It's time to liberate my mind, to free my mind of those thoughts. Just let my mind be free. Okay. Stop harboring on these negative thoughts and just let it be free. Let it relax. Okay. That's when it's time to zoom out. So you practice that. Practice that in your running. Focusing in when it's time to focus in, and zooming out when you know your mind needs a break. Okay? That's a powerful tool. Very powerful tool. The other one is, and it has to do with your focus, is staying present, right? A lot of times when we start focusing in, we start thinking, oh my God, I got so many miles to go, right? It becomes overwhelming. And there's a few things here that we can talk about in staying present. And one would be chunking, right? And chunking, it can be, chunking on aid station to aid station. Or if that's too far, then chunk it up into your nutritional breaks, your nutritional intakes, however frequent that is, whatever it is, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever you do. Focus on that interval, right? Chunk it that way. Instead of thinking about it in miles, think about it in minutes. Okay, I've got blah, blah, blah until my next intake, right? Remind yourself or have your pacer remind you. Focus on that piece. Focus on the next aid station, or focus. What I do sometimes is, when am I going to see my crew again? Right? That's my chunking. So whatever chunking works for you, thinking about when I'm going to see my next crew or when I'm going to get a pacer, those are huge chunking pieces for me because it motivates me. I'm excited to see my crew. I'm excited to see my friends and my family. That's huge, right? Or when am I going to get my pacer? Like, that's motivating. That keeps me present because I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it, of course, but it also keeps me thinking about, all right, what do I need to do to get there? That's the big thing, right? And that's staying present. So I'm trying to avoid negative thoughts. Okay. Now, meditation teaches you acknowledge thoughts, positive and negative, and let them go, right? Acknowledge them, know they're present, but let them go. Okay. Especially if they're not helpful. Negative thoughts typically aren't helpful. So practicing the art of acknowledging a thought and letting it go. It's fantastic. I've been meditating every day. I use the Headspace app, as I've talked about, and it teaches you about letting go of thoughts, about acknowledging, okay, there is this thought, but I need to let go of it and focus on the present. And what that teaches you is you focus on your breath. You focus on the inhale and then focus on the exhale. You can focus on the breath going in and then what your body does as it goes in. Where is the breath going? Follow the breath. And then you focus on the exhale and the muscles relaxing. You can count. Headspace has you count up to 10. 1 on the inhale, 2 on the exhale, 3 on the inhale, 4 on the exhale, right? All the way up to 10, and then you start over again. And what it shows you is that you thoughts do come in. They do filter in while you're counting, but you just acknowledge it and let it go and get back to your counting. If you forget where you're at, start back at 1. It's a great practice to help you stay present. It teaches you about letting go of those thoughts as well. So that's huge in helping you stay present, because when those negative thoughts start filtering in, you learn how to say, okay, yep, I see it. It's not going to help me. I appreciate the thought brain, but I have to move on, right? And let that thought go. That's a challenge right there. That is an obstacle. Having the ability to push those thoughts aside and let go of them, to not let them stay within the brain, to not give them their moment, right? Well, you give them a second, acknowledging that they were there, but then you let it go so that it's not a part of your brain anymore. That's tough, but it takes practice. And that's why they say meditation is a practice. It's really helped me through a lot. And I've learned how to channel and be patient. The whole thing is being kind and compassionate. And you have to be kind and compassionate, not only to others, but to yourself. And meditation is a great practice of that. So use that in staying present, right? Think about what do you need now? Instead of asking why, right? Why is the wrong question? Why should have been answered a long time ago. We talked about that at the beginning. Your why, right? That should be present. You should be asking what? What do I need right now? What do I need at this moment? The answer may be nothing, and that's okay, but you've checked in, and that makes you present, right? So, what do I need right now in order to be able to continue? Do I need to slow down? Do I need food? Do I need water, electrolytes? What do I need? Do I need a solve? Do I have a hotspot? Right? So ask what. Do your mental check in. That helps you stay present. Those are helpful thoughts. And then what can I do to resolve it if there is something going wrong, right? Go through your toolbox. What do I have to problem solve this? Right? So a lot there with staying present, right? So we talked about chunking, breaking the race up, right? How do you break the race up to make it more manageable so you're not overwhelmed by how many miles are to go? So chunking. We talked about using the premises of meditation to control thought and push negative thoughts away. Now, positive thoughts, when we ask, what do I need? That deserves our attention, right? So the question's what? What do I need right now? What can I do about X, Y, and Z, right? Those deserve our attention. We don't need to push those away, but it helps us stay present, okay? And we also have to know our triggers. And this is my last point. Understand what triggers you, what creates negative reactions in you. Okay. That can come from a lot of things. I know one of my triggers is when I overheat. I have a really hard time when it's super hot and I'm not managing my heat well. That is a trigger for me to go sideways, for things to go downhill quickly, right? Another trigger is my stomach, as I talked about earlier. How do I manage my stomach? How do I still get through the race while still eating? But that's a trigger, and that's something that I've had to work around. Same with the heat. It's always a challenge, but there's got to be workarounds. I have to have plans and be prepared for that challenge. I have to know my triggers, right? That's the biggest thing is knowing, your weaknesses, knowing where you are susceptible to a possible DNF, right? What challenges you? When it gets hard, where does your brain go? Right? When you get sleepy, sleepy is definitely tough for me. I about 2 to 3 a.m., I get super tired. It's always hard for me. So I need to have a caffeine plan to help keep me awake during that time. And sometimes I nail it and sometimes I don't. The same plan doesn't always work, and that's why we have to have multiple. Okay? But knowing the triggers and how to solve them. Again, like knowing when you get dark, when you are challenged and you're like, I'm just tired, right? Physically, I'm just worn out. I'm fatigued. I don't know if I can go on. When you're in that moment of weakness, what's going to get you going? What's going to keep you going? Doesn't have to be at the same rate, doesn't have to be at the same pace, right? But what will keep you moving forward? Right? And that's everything we just talked about. You're looking at your goal, thinking about your whys, right? Asking the whats. All of these things that you've put in your toolbox. It's time to use them. So know your triggers and have your countermeasures. Okay? All of this wraps up nicely with just making sure that your toolbox is jam-packed, as full as you can make it, with all the necessary tools that you can use to combat anything that may come at you. Use those, practice those, train with those. Okay? Don't stop thinking about them. Write them down, put them in your phone so you have access to them. right? That way, when you're in the race, you can bring those up. Put your why in there as a reminder. Okay. That's huge. All right, y'all. I appreciate everybody listening. Um, Listen, you guys have been amazing. I've had so many donations for the cross country team. I am so overwhelmed and just so inspired and proud of all of you and thankful. I'm grateful. My kids are beyond grateful. We've had a number of expenses that have popped up. For instance, this weekend we're doing an overnight trip. We didn't expect it to be, but the race time is so early, we have to go down to Charlotte early and stay overnight. So unforeseen expense, but thanks to you guys and your generous donations, we're able to do this sort of thing. So thank you. I can't say thank you enough. Um, we still are on for September 28th for the Truly Tough Cross Country Classic. I sincerely hope you can join us. It is a 5K. It's on the trails at Rugby. It's about, I would say, a good 85% single track. Very challenging course. Going to be a lot of fun. Of course, proceeds all go to the middle school and high school teams. So I hope you can come out and join me on September 28th. If you would like to make a donation to the cross country team, by all means, reach out to me. I really appreciate that. And all that have donated, again, my sincerest gratitude. Like I said, you all are wonderful. So please join us September 28th. That's coming up quick. I plan on recording an episode with Travis Macy tomorrow. I know I've promised that. So next week we should, I hope, have that episode with Travis. We're going to talk about coaching and kind of get into the nitty gritty of our sides of coaching and our visions of coaching and and what we believe. So I hope you'll just stay tuned for that episode. Um, I have a marathon coming up myself in October. I'm doing the Cannonball Marathon in Greensboro. Um, I've kind of come to terms with I don't have the capacity at the moment to train like I would love to for Cannonball or for JFK, and that's okay. I am getting in runs here and there, albeit not as much mileage as I'd like. I'm kind of just getting in an hour in the morning and then I'm running in the afternoon at practice if I have the time to do so. If my kids don't need my attention, I'll go for a run. So, I'm getting in what I can and I'm happy about that. I'm happy to just be able to get out there and run. But my focus isn't on performance at either the Cannonball Marathon or the JFK. The focus is really on just getting out there and going for completion and trying to enjoy it in the process. As much as like I said, as much as I would love to to get out there and compete, it's not in the cards this go around. But I hope to complete both and just have a great time while doing it. So, um, other than that, though, I've had a number of people reach out about coaching. Great time of year to start talking about 2025. So if you're interested in coming on board on 2025 and want to have a conversation, please feel free to contact me. All my contacts are in the show notes. Reach out to me and let's talk. And you can decide whether my coaching style is right for you, if I'm what you're looking for. As a note, I just want to make sure 2025 I will have a price increase. I haven't increased my rates since before COVID. And with inflation and stuff, I have to do what's best for my family. So I will be increasing my price. So just so everybody knows, most likely it will probably go up to 150 a month. Now, I don't want it to be a barrier to entry for people that are looking for coaching. So it's always a discussion we can have. I do have scholarships for runners, and I'm willing to make it work for you if it becomes too expensive. Because again, I don't want that to be a barrier for entry. I don't feel good about raising the price. It's not what I really like to do. It doesn't make me feel good. I'll be honest. But again, like I have to look at it is it's what's best for my family. So. So that's how I wanted to make sure everybody understood moving forward. Um, Other than that, my friends, if you have questions, comments, concerns, please reach out. I love hearing from you guys. Had some really good questions come in. If you have one that you'd like to discuss on a podcast, feel free, reach out. Happy to talk. So with that, I'm going to say thank you to my Patreon supporters. Thank you to you all for listening. Until next time, keep moving forward, my friends. Running is life.